Well, look, welcome to Nasstar's PSTN Switch Off Fireside Chat. We're here today to talk about the PSTN Switch Off, what it is, what the impact is, and ultimately what it means for us and our organisations. I'm Dan Wilesmith. I'm one of the sales leaders here at Nasstar, and the PSTN Switch Off is having a massive impact on pretty much all of my customers. We've also got some input today from Steve Blackshaw. Steve's the director of IP migration at BT Group. So Steve's actually responsible for leading the PSTN Switch Off initiative. I'm also joined today by Shane.
Hi Dan, my name's Shane Brighton. I'm a customer solution architect at Nasstar. My role is to work with our customers to come up with strategies and solutions for challenges such as the PSTN Switch Off.
Thank you, Shane. So before we dive into things, let's just start. Let's have a look at the first video that Steve's shared with us.
Well, what's switching off is the Wholesale Line Rental 3 network, or WLR. That supports both ISDN and legacy phone lines PSTN. The reason it's switching off is it's an aging network built in the early 1980s with connectivity lines which were in place way before then. It's suffering over 2,500 major incidents a year, and each major incident takes out 500 or more lines. And that's because it's so old and end of life. We're running out of spares, the engineer's retiring, and quite frankly, it's really costly to maintain and keep running. It really does not support the future applications such as cloud and high definition video over slower broadband.
So Steve mentioned a bit about PSTN. Sounds like it's expensive to maintain, and it sounds as though it's probably not fit for modern purpose. Let's start at the very top. PSTN, what is it?
PSTN is effectively the legacy network that's used to run and carry all voice traffic in the UK and indeed globally. At the moment, BT, or over the last quite a few decades now, have been in the process of decommissioning that legacy network and replacing it with modern IP-based networks.
Fine.
Which
so it's the copper network. You know, you and I, we'd see it as phones, faxes.
correct.
And out in the streets, it's those boxes at the end of the street, the cabinets. Yeah. They connect to exchanges.
Yes, they do. From there, they connect to the exchange. So it's effectively what we're talking about is the carrying of voice across those circuits. Right?
Okay.
So at the moment, voice carries across a PSTN network.
Yeah.
As an analog method, in an analog way. That's now being switched over to IP-based voice, such as VoIP.
Okay.
So those copper lines are running power at the moment to be able to carry that voice traffic.
Yeah.
When they switch it to a purely data-based copper line, there's no longer power running through those lines.
Okay, I see. And it sounds, if I'm understanding correctly, maintaining these huge exchanges that are all over the country, that's expensive.
Of course, as Steve mentioned, due to the age of the infrastructure, they simply are struggling with the expertise. A lot of the equipment in use isn't even manufactured anymore, so you can imagine being able to spare and repair those legacy systems are a real challenge for the likes of BT. And of course, when there's an outage, they're pretty significant, and it's happening more and more predominantly due to the age of the infrastructure.
I think Steve mentioned 1,500 incidents a year, each one affecting 500 people.
We did.
So my guess is those are exchanges going down or something like that.
Absolutely, yes. We're not just talking about the loss of a single line, or the ability to make and receive a phone call.
Yeah. So that's what PSTN is. What does it do then? So it's phone, it's fax, it's internet.
It's all kinds of sort of surprisingly hidden critical systems.
Okay.
We find it in lift alarm systems, in fire alarm systems, CCTV systems. You know, more importantly, in our day-to-day life, we find them in traffic light systems.
Okay.
Signage, for transport. There's many scenarios in our day-to-day lives where we come across or use or interact with systems that are connected to the PSTN.
Fine. So this is going to affect every organisation within every vertical. It's not just down to public sector or NHS or, for example, let's talk about retail. So if I'm understanding correctly, you could have a retail store, you could have 600, 700, 800 sites across the UK. You might have in the store, you might have some customer Wi-Fi, you might have some till systems, some EPOS systems. They're reliant on connectivity over PSTN, so they can process payments, process sales, things like that.
Absolutely, stock keeping systems. they rely on the PSTN network to deliver the legacy ADSL connections to those stores, right?
Right.
Now, they typically don't need high bandwidth connections, so it was more than fit for purpose. The challenge now is that element of it's being turned off. So we need to find alternative IP-based solutions for those connections.
Okay, fine. So let's just talk a little bit then about public sector. So let's understand the kinds of PSTN services that we think exist today within public sector. So you mentioned traffic lights.
Yes.
What else might there be?
Well, I mean, there's all sorts of scenarios in terms of care for vulnerable individuals, right? Being able to make and receive a phone call or to contact a vulnerable person is pretty critical, right?
Red alarms, I understand, often use PSTN network.
Absolutely, because the idea there is in terms of a lot of systems or within buildings, they tend to have modern-based IP phone systems internally.
Yeah.
So to remove the reliance on that IP-based phone system going down, they tend to have a separate red alarm, which will be on a dedicated PSTN connection.
I see. Okay. And then just getting broader than that, things like libraries.
Yes.
Building management control systems, train stations.
Absolutely. Yes.
Vehicle transport signage, PSTN, it's probably everywhere, and we probably don't really fully understand the extent to which it's delivering services to us.
No, we don't, and there is the challenge, right? A lot of these systems have been installed themselves decades ago, right? And at the time, we put in an ADSL connection to ensure they could connect to the supplier who was potentially monitoring them or carrying out maintenance, or, you're in the lift, you push the alarm button, it calls through to the contact center, with someone then tries to help you if you're stuck in a lift, right? The challenge with those systems is one, finding them and knowing how they connected. But two is we often don't even know they exist until we need them. We don't enter a lift and immediately test the intercom alarm button to make sure we get through to someone right before we take the lift. But the day might come when someone needs it. After January 2027, and if it wasn't a PSTN, they're not going to be in contact with anybody.
Fine. Okay. Let's just talk briefly about energy and utility companies specifically. What kind of services might they be relying on PSTN to deliver?
Absolutely. Another very critical industry, right? Those type of organizations are reliant on connectivity to be able to monitor all those critical systems they operate. And a lot of the systems they operate and run are actually life-saving critical systems, so power generation, heating, cooling, those sorts of things, right? They need the connectivity to be able to manage their SCADA systems, their remote pumps. I have a particular customer, they have a challenge, they do heat generation for district heating, and a loss of connectivity to one of those heat pumps means someone goes cold in the winter eventually, right?
So this is critical infrastructure.
Absolutely, because they go blind then, right? So this customer in particular has spent the last few months doing that transition away from PSTN to ensure that they have a modern IP network to be able to continuing delivering the service.
Right.
And it has more further knock-on effects besides the societal effects I just spoke about. They, for example, in a utility scenario, you might not be able to read your meters remotely, and therefore you can't bill your customers, and that has an impact on your revenue.
Yep.
And then, of course, these are regulated industries too, right? So I think the thing with the PSTN switch off is it's not a case of if it happens, because it's going to happen, right? What do you do on the day it happens? How do you explain that to your board? How do you explain that to your regulator?
So let's just touch briefly then on NHS and healthcare in general. What kind of services might they be utilising PSTN for?
Well, surprisingly, faxing, right?
Okay.
I know a lot of us probably haven't sent a fax for 20 years.
That's
plus,
right.
But it's part of their workflows, right? Similarly to the legal sector, but particularly in the healthcare, faxing is still a thing.
Is that faxing through prescriptions or?
It is various reasons, moving documentations between departments.
Okay.
There's still a lot of sort of legacy manual processing and systems.
Yeah.
There's strong, projects and programs in place to digitize, but faxing is still in use. We have equipment that's potentially connected over the PSTN. So with a lot of equipment and application and software suppliers, what they tend to do is they tend to package their solutions. So they might provide a healthcare system with a dedicated connection as part of that package, and that connection may be on a PSTN line.
Yeah, I see.
ADSL circuit, right? Which means that they need to be able to use that circuit to monitor and manage the environment.
I see.
They now lose connectivity with the switch off, right?
Yeah.
So there's some really critical systems, on-call systems, again, red phones operating in hospitals, again, very critical systems.
And we haven't even spoke about phones in doctors' surgeries and...
Of course.
Yeah, pharmacies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We know how frustrating it is if we can't get through to someone on the phone in the doctor's surgery, because we normally need help, right? We need someone to care for us. So it's important to the individual, right, to get that right. Some other challenges in terms of healthcare. So what are we thinking about? You got... a lot of the very big hospitals have contact centers, right? So are they modern IP-based contact centers, or are they still using ISDN? But
and ISDN, just to clarify, ISDN, that's in scope for the PSTN switch off.
Absolutely. It's a legacy ADSL and ISDN, and they are reliant on the PSTN switch off.
Fine. Yeah. So how do I know if something is a PSTN line? Do I just pick up and I hear a dial tone and, aha, this is PSTN?
Oh, no. I mean, that's not strictly an indicator, because you can get a dial tone on an IP-based phone system.
Okay.
One really straightforward way might be to see if the device or the phone you're using is plugged directly into the wall.
Like what we used to have at home on the old phone systems, the little clip that snaps off. And
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
okay.
Another really straightforward way might be to look at your bill from your telecoms provider, and if there's a line on there showing line rental, that would indicate it's a PSTN line.
Got you. But there's still a lot of research to be done. It's not a straightforward process, is what I'm understanding.
It's not. And one of the key elements is to do that audit and discovery and to find those lines, right?
Exactly. And we'll come to that. But if I'm understanding correctly then, so PSTN, it's the physical copper-based service that is currently everywhere, that predominantly allows us to make calls, send faxes, send and receive data. It's being switched off.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's been switched off for the reasons that we've already spoken about. The legacy expensive to maintain, and they're going ahead with a switch off. The original switch off was announced, I believe, in 2017.
Yeah.
It was originally going to be switched off in 2025, and then that was pushed to 2027, right?
Yeah.
And there's no going back on that 2027 date.
So I just want to explore a bit more as to why we're switching this off, because to me it just works. I pick up the phone, I call my nan, she answers, we have a chat, we end the call, that's it. And that's always worked. I can't think of a time I've ever gone to use this and it's not worked. So I'm just let's explore that a bit more.
Agreed, Dan, absolutely. You're right. In those scenarios, it's always just worked and has done for a very, very long time. The problem with the network now is it doesn't have the capacity or the capability to carry some of the modern services that we use nowadays. If, for example, you think about it, we all use Microsoft Teams to communicate with each other. We're all streaming high-definition video.
Yeah.
Right? So with a lot of those legacy PSTN-type services, they're quite limited in terms of how much bandwidth they could provide to the end user. Right?
Got you.
So we need to modernize the network to keep up with that. We need to be able to leverage cloud solutions more practically. And those all require more stable, broader connectivity options.
Got you. So it's simply not fast enough for today's modern demands. And we've all seen massive changes in how we use the internet. We all work from home, as you touched on. We all use Teams. We all stream high definition video. This is probably going out at some 4K streaming that I expect is going to saturate a lot of traditional copper networks. So apologies for that. Fine. Okay. And you touched on it. It sounds as though the existing network, it's incredibly expensive to maintain.
It is, as we've already discussed and Steve alluded to earlier, it's costing a lot to maintain.
Yeah.
And it's frankly becoming very unreliable.
Fine. So it's getting switched off. Loud and clear, I hear you, and I understand why. So let's just touch on this date, because I know that the date's moved a couple of times, which I understand. Are we going to get to January 27 and it's like big bang, the big lever goes off and everything shut down? Just talk me through what's going to happen.
Honestly, we can't say that, right? Because we don't know. The decision is made within, BT, for example, and Openreach. The reality is at the moment, that's what they've locked in, and they have not made a plan not to do that, right? Up until now, what's been a challenge is overcoming some of the telecare type services and getting those working and, deployed. And they've now overcome those challenges, right? So they've made it clear that this is now happening.
Okay.
The delay to date has been because of those challenges, but those have now all been overcome.
But it's already started, hasn't it? We're regularly having to tell customers, hey, Mr. Customer, I'm really sorry, this exchange is closing down.
Yes.
We've just been given notice by BT or whoever the underlying provider is, and you've got to do something.
Correct.
Here's your 2 months notice.
Correct. It's happening, right? There's no drop dead one day, bam,
Right.
switch off, it's going to happen.
Right.
And what will happen come January 2027 is whatever's left there will simply just be turned off, the voice elements of those lines, right?
Right, I see. Okay. So how do I know then if my services are going to be switched off?
You'll be informed. So
Okay.
you'll be notified that the service is due to be switched off, it has to be terminated, the exchange is being shut down, the PSTN voice element of your line is going to be removed. It will now become a data-only line.
Yeah.
So you have options there where you may have, for example, switch from ISDN or a ADSL line to a SOGEA circuit, right? You might be fortunate where there's fiber to the premises available. So, there's some large advantages to be gained there too, right, in terms of that incremental additional growth and bandwidth that will be available to you.
Fine. Okay, so to summarise, PSTN switch off, it's happening because the current PSTN copper network, it's simply not good enough for today's demands. It's incredibly expensive to maintain. And in terms of when's this happening, it's already happening now. Exchanges are closing down on a weekly basis. And this 2027 January end date, you can take a risk and wait till that date. But the reality is between now and then, there's a good chance that the exchange that you're relying on to deliver your services is going to be cut off, and it's going to be, here's your 2 months notice. Thank you very much.
Exactly. I think a good way to approach it is actually see January 27 as a completion date.
Yes, absolutely.
It's not the end date, because if you leave it to the last week, you're actually going to be stuck. You're not going to be able to do it.
And we're seeing it now. We've still got 30,000 or more PSTN circuits left under our management for our customers, and we've got customers falling over themselves to try and do something about this now. And I think, a lot of our customers are ahead of the curve. They're doing something about it, but I feel like a lot are leaving it until October, November, December, and then they're going to come and want to do something quickly. Absolutely.
A recent figure published by Openreach was that there's at least 500,000 businesses still have PSTN lines installed.
Wow.
A specific example they gave, they're aware of exactly at least 12,000 lift alarms that are still using these circuits.
Wow. So I think we're touching on here, what can we do about it? And I guess my first question is, can we do nothing? But don't answer that. Let's see what Steve has to say.
Doing nothing is a really bad option. Basically, in 2026, Openreach are going to raise the price of WLR services to all communication providers. In January 27, products that are not single-line PSTN will be removed off the network. So ISDN, legacy ADSL, FTTC, feature line and multi-line, plus the legacy broadbands and the data products. That will leave single-line PSTN only. And Openreach have already declared a brand new product called EVAC, Emergency Voice Access Circuit. Every single line PSTN that's left from February 1st, 27 is eligible for EVAC and will be force migrated to it.
Doing nothing sounds like it's not an option. That EVAC thing's new. I think we'll share what we know about that shortly. We'll come to that. But if I'm understanding correctly, BT are basically going to be ramping up the prices between now and the PSTN switch off. They're closing down exchanges, as we've discussed. So you really can't do nothing. That's not an option.
But absolutely not. And, coming back to the price ramping, that's already started.
Yeah.
The first increase was in April. I believe there's another one in July.
Every 3 months.
And then again in October. So by the time we get to August, October time, your line rental cost has doubled.
Yeah.
Will have doubled by then.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk about the impact. Let's imagine I do nothing. Okay. So let's start with public sector. Let's say councils. So let's say I'm chief executive of a council or a CIO or a CTO or whoever's remit it is to manage this PSTN switch off. Now let's say that I decide to do nothing. Okay. I come into work on the start of February 27. I've done nothing about it. PSTN has been switched off. What does my day look like? What's the impact?
Well, the systems reliant on those connections simply stop working. Right? You've not got another route to get to those systems. You've got no way of accessing them remotely. there's no way of getting them to communicate with one another. All those, if you imagine you went into your building now and you turned your power off, right?
Turned
your power off.
Yeah.
Any critical systems that are still connected are on PSTN networks, right? Because as I mentioned earlier, they have their own power.
Right.
Good. So those are the systems that come January 27. They are the ones that are actually going to lose their connections, right?
So this could be anything. So it could be that my contact center stops working.
Yes, if you're using ISDN.
Yep. Coming into April, people want to pay their council tax bill. They now can't get in touch with me.
Yep.
It could be that traffic lights stop working as they should do.
Correct. The signals aren't synchronized, or there's an issue controlling them.
Yeah. Interestingly, I work with one of our customers currently who we're working with their highways team. They have traffic lights all across the southwest, and the PSTN switch off. They're already planning, and we're already making amendments and changes to the infrastructure that supports the traffic lights. But this is incredibly disruptive to them. Thankfully, if they lose connectivity, they don't just turn off. They just roll back to a set schedule of red, amber, green, but that does lead to traffic problems, and they're not able to make updates at the right time of day when they know there's going to be traffic coming from certain directions, and this is hitting some quite big roundabouts just off the M5.
Of course, and then they lose control of any real-time events, right? Environmental sort of flooding is a good example.
Yeah.
If we can't monitor water levels.
Right.
Because the great thing about PSTN as it was historically, because it's such an old network architecture, it was quite easy to deliver in any location, right? As long as you can run a copper wire, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that you'll find them in all these weird, difficult places to operate in. And that's always been a challenge. And I think that's what a lot of organizations have, that challenge in terms of is actually finding that connection point. Because they've been put in place many, many years ago, and they continue to run.
Yeah.
To use your analogy earlier, and you pick up the phone, you make a call, it works, right? It's the same with those systems, right? They've just worked all these years.
Yeah.
And now suddenly when that PSTN element gets turned off, or Steve, as scarily mentioned, forced migration, right, to that EVAC, it's going to lose its connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, fine. Okay, so let's just explore the impact in a bit more depth. So let's imagine I'm the chief exec or the CTO, CIO, whoever's responsible for this PSTN thing off, say, an NHS trust. I come into work, 1st of Feb, 27, I've paid no attention to the PSTN switch off, and the exchanges locally to me have now been shut down. What does my day look like?
Pretty challenging, I can imagine, right? And the reality is it's going to be a pretty difficult situation you're going to find yourself in. So any of those critical systems or that were dependent on PSTN will now no longer be able to communicate, no longer potentially be maintained by your suppliers. You may have critical care lines that are dedicated on PSTN circuits that vulnerable people could call, or that doctors or nurses may need to be able to call through. You would lose those capabilities right overnight.
Right. Could also be the applications the nurses are using, doctors.
Yeah.
Faxes, as you say, faxing through prescriptions and.
Still stops working if it's on a PSTN line and requires the data element. You will only be able to make a call to an emergency service in that scenario.
Right. So the impact is huge.
It is huge. Yeah. It is potentially huge. You have to go out there and find those lines.
Right.
A scenario could be that you've got a healthcare equipment that might get remotely managed and updated by the manufacturer. They may use a dedicated PSTN line to access that device for security reasons, right?
Right.
Because a lot of the healthcare systems are very well ring-fenced so that they can't be compromised. And if they're using a legacy PSTN connection for that, they will lose access to that system.
Right. Wow. Okay, fine. So I just want to talk about the impact a bit broader. Let's focus on retail for a minute or two. So let's imagine I'm chief exec or CTO, CIO, whoever's responsible for this PSTN switch off problem fixing within a large retail organization. I come into work, it's 1st of February 2027. I've paid no attention to the PSTN switch off. I've buried my head in the sand. And now everything's switched off and the exchanges are closed. What does my day look like?
Well, you don't get to open your store.
Okay, right.
The same way you wouldn't open your store without power, you won't be able to open it without connectivity.
Okay.
Because typically you might have that store on a single ADSL connection.
Yep.
Which is now being decommissioned.
So this is for the tills to process payments.
You'll be using that same connection for your point-of-sale systems, your credit card processing machine, your stock-keeping systems, staff time-keeping systems. Any system you name it, you might be using that single ADSL connection to carry all of that critical store information and data. And you lose that overnight. So the store will be blind. You'll be blind to what's going on in the store. And frankly, I'm not sure the store would be able to open in that scenario.
Yeah, understood. That's huge.
It is a big thing. It is a big thing. Does it affect your ability to be able to take payments? But what happens if you can't, if you have to, at very short notice, find staff to replace staff that may not have arrived at work that morning for whatever reason? Well, there's very many reasons why it's critical that a retail store maintains connections.
Fine. Okay. So I guess following question from that, what does recovery look like? Let's say that I've, whether on purpose or accidentally, I've just not quite fully realised the impact of this, and I've got a number of PSTN services that I've relied on. Mm-hmm. They've now been cut off. How do I restore those? Can I make a couple of calls to my supplier and beg them and get back online? What does it look like?
Frankly, Dan, you can't. Right? This is it's a one-way change. As Steve alluded to, the force change is happening. There's nothing you'll be able to do about it. You can't reverse it. So you simply will have to go through a process of reprovisioning a connection.
Right.
And if it's a fixed, LAN-based connection, like a new Sogeo circuit or maybe an FTTP circuit, you've got your time between your ability to be able to order that circuit and before it gets installed.
So this is weeks at least.
And potentially more, right? Because if the PSTN switch off as a result of so many more thousands of organizations ending up to ordering new circuits, it's potentially going to be a huge backlog, right? That may not be able to be delivered in time. And there's other solutions. For example, you can do a critical deployment of a mobile cellular-based connection, but it's still all hands to the pump. It's trying to find the right equipment, finding the right suppliers.
And presumably that relies on signal, aerials,
absolutely,
bandwidth availability,
in place with the mobile cellular network providers, those sort of things, right? And sending someone to site to go and make the change, because you can't rely on your retail store staff to make those changes. You'll have to send out an engineer. So, I mean, that's where I guess the point is, it's sort of you end up paying twice, really, right? Because you've got the challenge of this, then you're going to end up putting in a potentially temporary solution, which you're only going to have to go and revisit again to undo that, to put in a future solution that you intend to keep.
Fine. So recovery isn't really an option?
It's not, unless you've already built some recovery options in there. It's not an option. You can't roll back from that, basically.
Fine. So back to the start of the topic then, which was what happens if we do nothing. That's really not an option. Doing nothing isn't an option. You're going to lose whatever voice, data, fax services that you're relying on, and it's not a simple quick fix to restore them. You're deploying a whole new service that you'd have to deploy anyway. You're probably going to be at the back of a very long queue of people that are trying to do the same thing, and it might take weeks, possibly months, to restore your service to a point that's actually acceptable for day-to-day use.
Completely. You'll be left with that forced evac service that Steve mentioned, right? Which simply means you can contact the emergency service providers.
So evacs, I said we'd explore that a bit more. So this is emergency voice access, is that right?
That's correct, yes. So it's really a very cut-down, simple voice line, and all it can do is contact the emergency services.
So it calls 999. That's it.
That's it. It's basic voice. It's got no other of the intelligent voice capabilities. Okay. There's no data on that line. Nothing.
Yeah. Okay.
And you'll be put on that and essentially render the line incapable of being used for any other purposes.
Fine. So it's not even going to call other emergency services. For example, social services can use it as a red line or a lift alarm. It's purely, we're calling your 999 contact centre.
Yes.
That's it.
That's it. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Fire, ambulance, police, the critical, absolute critical services.
And that's evac. I know that not much information is available at the moment, but I believe that this is still a chargeable service. that's going to be subject to the PSTN cost increases, or do we not know?
Well, it's not entirely clear, but I think it's very safe to assume you will continue to pay that elevated line rental cost on a line that actually provides you no other service.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I'm just trying to think of scenarios where EVAC by itself would be acceptable, and I'm struggling to think of many.
It isn't, and the reason why it exists is because doing nothing in terms of that element is simply unacceptable, right? So that is there for that reason, and you wouldn't want to build your strategy or your connection around that, right? It's not a fallback. It's nothing to be relied on.
This all sounds quite scary, but there are obviously opportunities here. I do want to explore with you what we can do about this now. But first, let's hear what Steve's got to say.
Our minimum viable migration effectively splits into two parts. Firstly, do a full inventory and identify all of the circuits that need to be on broadband and can carry a voice. So that's effectively your voice estate, and it's about 99% of line usage actually. Then identify the 1% we call edge use cases, things that connect to a phone network that aren't a phone. So things like lift alarms and telecare sensors, and things that go ping in hospitals. There are alternates available for all of those edge use case devices. Run both plans in parallel, sell off the voice and implement a new voice solution, and then look with vendors at alternate equipment for your edge use cases.
So that was interesting. The way I understand it from how Steve's explained it, there are really two things that we need to do. Firstly, an audit, i.e. understand what have we got, what's the impact going to be? And then secondly, I think Steve mentioned two things. 99% of the services can probably just be migrated to a modern connectivity service without too much disruption. But Steve spoke a bit about edge use cases that probably make up the 1 to 5% of other use cases. And this is things like lift alarms, red care, these kinds of things that have an existing device. The device plugs into PSTN using the old style connectivity, and that device just simply isn't compatible with the modern connectivity network.
Spot on. That's absolutely it. Yeah.
So let's start with the audit, because from what I've picked up from what you've told me, it's incredibly difficult to really understand the full extent of what I might have within my organization that relies on PSTN. So an audit, I guess the output is going to help that, and it's going to tell me everything I've got and what the impact's going to be. Where do I start with that?
And that's the real challenge, right? I mean, the approach Steve mentioned is at the absolute bare minimum. In terms of the audit and the inventory, you need to discover all the lines, all the devices, all the equipment connected to those PSTN circuits. And in some circumstances, you may not be able to find out yourself.
Yeah.
So you will have to go to your vendors or your maintenance organizations or your maintenance partners of your systems that you think are connected to a PSTN network. So, I wouldn't at any point suggest someone go and climb in a lift and try and find out where the lift alarm is connected, right? Leave it to the professionals. But these, you need to talk to these suppliers, right?
Yeah.
Question them, say to them, are your systems reliant on the PSTN circuit or ADSL or ISDN? What happens when it gets turned off? Or do you have an alternative modern IP-based type solution that you could replace it with, right? Is there an adapter or something that they could do to make the system work on a modern network connection?
Fine. And we can help with these audits.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. Yes, but doing the audit and getting that clear inventory is absolutely critical. Because as I said, the hard part about PSTN is finding those lines.
Yeah.
If you use an example of an organization where they have a reasonably large campus, or there might be quite big building, what often happens over years is various business units buy specific pieces of equipment or pieces of software that the vendor might have supplied a PSTN circuit along with the service to be able to maintain it through its life, update it, carry out patching, those sort of things. Now with the PSTN switch off, they lose that connection. So how critical is that system?
Yeah.
Go to those vendors, go to those manufacturers, your suppliers, and say, is this system capable of connecting to a modern IP-based network?
Yeah, I see. I think one of the biggest challenges that I see within my customers is that if you look at traditional PSTN lines, they're what? They're £20, £30 a month max.
Yeah.
anyone and everyone within the organization can buy them. There's no centralized view of, hey, this is our entire PSTN estate. If I look at a typical county council, it could be that, someone within a particular building has bought some phone lines for that building, whether that's by estates management. Separately, you've got someone within IT that's purchased some for their data center, for their contact center. You might have someone in procurement. You might have someone in a different remote building. And it's a real challenge. I find the challenge that way. Who is ultimately accountable for this? And B, who's the best person within that organization to find all the PSTN, an exhaustive list? And I'm not saying I have an answer, because I don't.
No, it's not. That's a hard one. And you know what? Ultimately, it might rest on departments such as estates and building management, right? And an element of IT there. But the key there is to engage all business stakeholders and all business owners.
Absolutely.
Because no one person or department within an organisation will know absolutely every single procurement that's been made by all these various departments. I mean, a hospital could be a good example, right? Many, many years ago, a specialist or specialist department might have bought some sort of diagnostics machine, right, that's connected to a dedicated ADSL circuit or an ISDN line, which the supplier requires access to be able to update and make changes and configure it, right? They're healthcare professionals. They bought a diagnostics machine. They didn't buy a PSTN connection. And with the best will in the world, they won't know what the challenges are around the PSTN switch off. So I would say all in it probably should be sort of IT, telecoms, business, facilities-led project, but every stakeholder in business needs to be engaged in it.
Fine. So as a bare minimum, then, stage one, do an audit, understand what you've got, understand the impact.
Absolutely. Do that audit, find those lines, find those connections, then categorize them, right? Prioritize them. Are there lines that are life-threatening if you lose them? Material impact to your business? Are there any that might cause regulatory issues for you? Right? So categorize those lines, prioritize them, and then decide actually how you're going to deal with it, right? Are you going to just replace from like for like? So for example, are you going to replace an ADSL with a SAGIA circuit? Do you re-engineer it, right? Is there maybe a newer device that you can connect on the end of a modern circuit? Or indeed, if you didn't know it was there in the first place, did you need it?
You need it, absolutely.
Retire, right?
Absolutely.
It's a line on your bill, and it's gone up over significantly. So, question whether you have the need for that. Right?
I think we're touching on a good point there, because this is massively disruptive, but it is an opportunity. And there's probably going to be an element of maybe some being able to save some costs, and we never knew this existed, therefore we don't need it. But ultimately, the newer technologies, they're faster, right?
They are. They're faster. They're cleaner. They just work. They're more resilient because you can build resiliency into the solutions. There's the advantages. Yes, it's a risk, and it's something that's got to be done, right? But and it's unfortunately a change you're going to have to incur, and there may be associated costs along with that. But if we can get some value out of it, then you should also look at that, right? Hence, that deciding is quite important, and that sequencing, right? What's really critical, right? Focus on your critical stuff and start now. There's no big bang day. As we've already discussed, you have to go now, right? You can't wait till January when it's finally going to happen, or set a week aside or a month aside saying on this month we're going to do it all, right? Because it's not that straightforward.
Fine. So look, if you're watching this and you're a little bit worried, just pick up the phone, just get in touch with us. We can help you to do an audit. We can help you to understand what the impact of the PSTN switch off is going to be. And more importantly, we can help you to plan around it as well.
Of course, planning is critical.
Absolutely. So Shane, look, this has been fascinating, and thank you. And obviously thanks to Steve as well for providing the videos. We've not covered a few things that I'm asked all the time. So the first frequently asked question that I always get is, what speed's available?
Well, obviously it depends on the access type and your location, but ultimately it is going to be better than your legacy. And in fact, sometimes far better, right? So if you were switching from a traditional ADSL circuit to FTTP, which is fiber,
to the premises.
Correct. You were talking a significant jump in available bandwidth, right?
Fine. Okay. So it depends on the site. We can tell you though, give us a phone number or a postcode or an address, and we can very quickly say...
We can establish what's available and then discuss and agree the right solution to choose. Because that's quite critical, right? We want to make sure we choose the right replacement.
Yeah.
Because we have to go back again in a couple of months' time and we realise it's the wrong choice. Yeah. We don't want to visit twice because it's going to cost you both.
And let's say one of my customers, that they're ahead of this, they're proactively trying to, modernise their network, and they make a decision that they want to change some of their existing copper circuits to an FTTP circuit that they know is available because we've checked. What does this look like? Is there disruption? Do we need an engineer to visit? Does it take weeks? Does it take months?
In the scenario you gave, it should take weeks, not months. With all change, there's an element of disruption. It just depends on exactly what is changing. Yeah. But we try to plan changes that it's as seamless as possible. Yeah. So when you say have a site that doesn't potentially have resilient circuits, we try and aim for minutes of outage as opposed to hours and days. Okay. That's not what we're looking for, right? But if you hit that deadline, you can talk days and weeks rather than hours and minutes, right?
Okay, fine. And then I guess this is how long's a piece of string, but how much does it cost? Like, I'm asked that a lot, and my understanding is a new FTTP circuit is roughly like for like.
It is a reality, right? That we are seeing that, our customers are seeing that. There's not much more in it because as I say, it's a like-for-like circuit service. It's broadband versus the ADSL or IDSN, ISDN. So it's very much thereabouts, right? It's just then you evaluate the other opportunities that might be available in terms of maybe now's a chance to look at security, for example. Yeah, you might want to look at potential firewall options, say in a retail store, and how you connect to that store security.
Okay, and the costs are roughly the same, but you're massive in some instances. You're massively increasing the available bandwidth, so you're effectively getting a lot more bang for your buck.
You are, and over the long term, those costs will be lower, right? Because of the age of the infrastructure we mentioned right at the start of this conversation is there's no more outages. It's more resilient, it's more stable, right? So you're not incurring a cost of failure, basically, right?
I see.
As I mentioned earlier, let's get it right? Let's work together. Let's get it right first time so we don't have to do it twice, because that's when it's really going to cost more.
Fine. Another question I'm asked often is, we've been talking about PSTN switch off, but I hear a lot of people use the term copper switch off. Are these the same thing?
Well, I think copper switch off is a bit of a misnomer, right?
Okay.
Because depending on the replacing technology, there's still going to potentially be copper running into your building.
Because Sagia still uses copper for a lot of the length of the service, right?
Absolutely. So, it's not a copper switch off. BT or Openreach aren't going to come along and rip the cable out the ground or remove the cable from your building, right?
Okay.
That cable simply now just carries data.
Right.
So while they might have fiber to the cabinet, there's still a piece of copper, or that sort of last mile, for a better term, that's going to be a piece of copper. And until that's replaced with fiber, it'll always be in there.
Fine. So PSTN switch off and copper switch off, we are talking about the same thing.
Essentially, yes, but the copper's still going to be on.
You don't like the term copper switch off because technically it's not right.
Correct.
I get it.
I can think of, in theory it's on because, as I mentioned right at the start of this conversation, there's power running down that line. In the future, there won't be power running down that line. But, so I think the copper will be there. It's not disappearing.
Understood. Thank you.
Unless you replace it with fiber.
Yeah. Look, Shane, thank you. This has been absolutely fascinating. I've learned a lot from talking to you today about the PSTN switch off. I certainly know a lot more now about what it is, and more importantly, what the impact is and what we can do about it. I hope those of you watching at home that you've learned something today and that this session's been helpful for you. If you're feeling a bit curious or concerned or worried, or you're not entirely sure that you're fully prepared for the PSTN switch off, just give us a call, drop us an email, contact us through any of the channels. I'm sure we'll pop some up on the screen now. Be great to hear from you, and we can invite people like Shane to come and talk to you, to do that audit, to understand what you've got, understand what the impact's going to be, and to how you build a plan that ensures that the copper switch off or PSTN switch off isn't going to have such an impact, and that it's just a nice, smooth journey for you. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thank you.